So I have a pet peeve when I listen to other people's online mixes sometimes. You know, the band is fine and everything is rocking, and then the host comes up or the pastor comes up to talk. And I feel like the engineer sort of has some of what we've talked about in mind, because they're trying to get that mix between the vocal and the band right. But the speaker hits the stage and it's so compressed, and it's like they're trying to make it so loud that it's almost distorted, and then you hear any kind of noise in the signal, it's just amplified and it just sounds so bad. So it's like they had the right idea, they just got it wrong, right? So how do we handle leveling and mastering, gain reduction, output makeup gain, like in terms of our goal for what it should measure?
So we've got an LV1 here. This is Andrew's file for his broadcast mix.
Yep.
And on the output, he's doing some dynamic EQ, some limiting, and we've got some meters. Why don't you talk us through what's happening here? Because your guys' online mix is stellar.
Yeah, so right off the bat, the first thing in the signal chain, putting an F6 on here, so I'm looking at this as if I was gonna go master a recording project. That's the way I look at it. This whole signal chain is my mastering. So way back when I used to take our broadcast stuff and go try to recreate it in Pro Tools the day after the weekend, which was a complete disaster every time, but we did it for about a year. And I got a kind of a nice mastering chain figured out that worked. I've kept some of those same little adjustments, the idea of those same little adjustments present here. So the F6, obviously we all love the F6, you know, we've talked about that plenty. But being able to put that in where it reacts dynamically to some of the stuff coming in just seems to make it a little bit happier for those times when you're hearing it without it feeling like it just got the crap compressed out of it. So that's the first thing I'm doing.
And the most you're doing is just a couple dB.
Just a couple dB, adding a little bit of high end in there, which is just kind of putting a little bit of that sparkle back that may have dissipated by the time you added room mics and audience mics and some other stuff. Sometimes it feels like it just needs a little bit of life put back in it. That's all that's doing. And then there's kind of that mid-range cut that's in there. So then we move on. And now this guy, have you guys used this plugin?
It's crazy for like album mastering and music mixing. It's great.
So that's a great way to tee it up. That's exactly how we're using it here. So it's reacting. I mean, you could just see what's going on with just what we fed into it. This is even taking it to another level now, past what the F6 is doing, because the relationship between one band is affected by the other band. So it's very, very fluid as far as the information that you're able to adjust and change.
The other thing about it though, one thing to be careful of, this particular plugin induces a lot of latency.
It does.
So that's why this is at the very end of the very end of all of your stuff, is that you wouldn't want this on one of your other buses because it would cause latency getting to this main output.
Almost about I think it's 100 milliseconds of latency. That's huge. But that right there tells you how much is going on and how much processing is going on. Now, have I had this forever? No. This is one of those things we just jumped into when we kind of started using this platform for this. But you find these tools that are really effective, and it's been nice in just shaping that tone. Again, this is all trying to shape the tone so we don't end up with an output on Facebook or YouTube or on our streaming platform that, you know, is blown away and doesn't sound right.
Or too quiet.
Or too quiet. That's the thing. Sometimes when you limit, the cool thing about it is you can bring that whole threshold up, but you can use it as a limiter. And a lot of times we hear some of the stuff and they're just using straight compressors. Those aren't very friendly when you get to a mastering stage. Not saying you can't use them, but I would rather go to a brick wall limiter and know that I've really got my level. It's never gonna go higher than this, but I can still create some dynamics behind it. So after that guy, man, go into an Ultra Maximizer. That's where you can really shape your entire tone, but not let it get too crazy, because you can adjust both those settings at the same time. So you see right there the attenuation that it's doing. It's just got what, about 3 dB of attenuation?
At the most.
At the very most. It's just, It's just leveling it out.
Yep.
So sometimes you could take the in and out and you'll never hear a change. But the times when you've got something that's really going nuts, that's very, very effective.
These are really popular with mastering. Even mixing, I've seen people stack 2 or 3 of these in line together.
That's right.
And like you've done that basically. Like L3 is like a bunch of L2s,
right.
and there's a crossover and you pick the frequency.
That's right.
This is also a great way to add volume without clipping.
That's right. That's why it's the very last thing in here. So like as you go through all this, this is kind of the, I guess you could call it the final gain stage if you wanted to. So after that.
And the very, very last thing is a meter, just to make sure you don't mess anything up.
So here's the thing, if you see my booth set up, I have an actual analog Dro meter sitting right in front of me. And everybody kind of goes, why do you, that's kind of weird, you have this meter sitting in front of you when you're sitting at the console with metering on the console.
Yeah.
It's because I'm metering what's coming out of my output record mix.
Got it.
And so what's really cool about this is over there on the master fader, you see that it says -3.3 for the output level. That's where we have set it, where that is our actual level we're sending that goes out to the universe. That goes out to everything we do. And if you look at the meter, how hot that is, it doesn't get any hotter than that.
Yep.
So if we're somehow slamming up in the red, I can almost tell you without a shadow of a doubt that we're distorting something and blowing something up. And that means there's something wrong. So if I can just keep an eye on that meter, it's really helpful while mixing an event, because you can just tell where you are, which is going to translate to an iPhone, to a computer, to someone's car.
Video encoders.
All that. If you're not paying attention to that metering, you're messing up all kinds of stuff down the line.
And the good thing is it's a great double check, because you've got on your other plugins here, you've got output ceilings set.
That's right.
So you know that output ceiling is -3.3.
Yep.
That meter is not ever going to get any hotter than -3.3.
That's right.
And if it is, that means something's routed wrong or something's weird, because you've already set what you want your limit to be.
So some of these things, and this is one thing that should be noted, when you're a house engineer, I'm not putting headphones on and off the whole time. I rarely use headphones anyway. So I don't have a way to go back and listen to this with headphones. You're not going to do that. You have to trust and set some of these tools up where you can visually see what's going on. So that's the thing. You can pay attention to this stuff even though you're not actually listening to that feed. Having quality metering and stuff has kind of been really handy for me.
I think a great lesson though about that is that you did spend years ago a lot of times, week to week to week, going back and listening to the archive, listening back, what would I change? How could I make it better? How could it be different? What's wrong with this?
We didn't have the luxury of playback or rehearsal mode or anything like that. So you got to get it close, cross your fingers, throw the dice, and go mix the event, and then go listen to it afterwards and hope you got it close and make adjustments and do better the next week.
But over time, that's why you now have a reliable system
Correct.
where you don't need headphones and double checks and all that, so you can focus on the mix at hand.
That's right.
Doing what you really feel like is great for the room, and you know that all this other stuff is handled.
You got it.